In this video, you're going to learn 7 key principles for how to win an endgame when you have just one extra pawn. This is a very common situation. At some point during the opening or the middle game, your opponent makes a mistake. You come out up one pawn, you go into an endgame, but now how do you win? Is it even enough to win, right? In this video, you're going to see Capablanca and how he approaches this game and how he wins. And there's 7 key principles. This is taken from the book, Capablanca's Best Chess Endings. This is a series we're doing on the channel. This is game number 8. I hope you guys are excited. This is going to be very instructive. Let's jump right in. All right, so here we go. As usual, I'm going to show you very quickly how he ended up in the endgame position. Capablanca's playing with the black pieces. We have a queen's gambit declined where he doesn't accept. He just defends his pawn on d5. Both players are developing their knights. We get some trades in the center. And right here is where white kind of makes a questionable move. Queen to e2. The queen was defending the pawn. So you had 3 defenders and 3 attackers, and he decides to play queen e2, maybe thinking he had some tactics with rook d1. I don't know, but Capablanca is actually just going to win the pawn. And this is what leads to this dynamic of 4 against 3 pawns where he has the extra pawn. Very common. This happens a lot in most games. Like somebody messes up at some point and you end up with a pawn. So, okay, we're going to skip through most of this stuff. We get the queens traded. White's pushing down here. Pair of rooks gets traded. And right around here, all right, this is where we're going to really start to focus on what do you do to win the game. This brings us to principle number 1. Before I tell you what it is, what move would you play in this position as black? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, the move that Capablanca played was rook to a1. So rooks are very annoying pieces, okay? So principle number 1 is that when you're trying to win, when you have some extra pieces in an endgame, particularly like an extra pawn or 2, trading rooks is usually a good thing, okay? Because you get rid of that annoying rook that can, a lot of times rooks will just check you and keep checking you and keep attacking random stuff, and they're just really hard to deal with. Even if you have your own rook, a lot of times you still just can't deal with your opponent's rook very well. So very smart decision by Capablanca. He just trades it off. There's no longer that pesky rook that he has to worry about. He can focus now more on his 4 against 3 pawn advantage and win the game. All right, so white plays king f2. Black to play. What do you think Capablanca played here? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, principle number 2 is you want to activate your king usually towards the center, and this applies in almost every endgame. Okay, the king is a very useful piece at the end of the game. You don't have a lot of pieces left, so you do need to use your king. And from the center, you can go wherever you want. If you need to go this way, you can do it. If you need to go this way, if you need to go sideways, if you need to go backwards, like wherever you want to go, the king can quickly get there. That's why, in general, putting it in the center makes sense. Now, sometimes you have to go target like specific things, and maybe you would go a different direction, but in general, you go towards the center. That's exactly what Capablanca does. Plays king f7, he plays e5, and king e6. Right? Keeps his pawns nice and pretty, puts his king on a really good square. All right, so white goes bishop d3. He plays g6. He's going to just slowly start pushing his pawns. And here white makes a mistake. Principle number 3 is, and this is something that was said in the book by Tarash, the pawns of the weaker side should rarely advance. Well, who's the weaker side in this position? Of course, it's white. You only have 3 and black has 4 pawns. So you're the weaker side. You should not push your pawns forward, is what he's saying. And the reason is because when you push them forward, it becomes easier for your opponent to trade off and get a passed pawn. And at the end of the day, that's what you need to win. Remember, a passed pawn is a pawn that can go all the way and become a queen without another pawn stopping it. And by pushing forward, you make their job easier. Okay? So just remember that if you're down, you don't push your pawns forward. All right, so Capablanca pushes. White plays b4, and now he plays e4. White captures. And I want you to pause and think about this carefully. Which way would you take this pawn? Would you take with your pawn or would you take with your bishop, and why? Okay, if you had a chance to look at that, so Capablanca takes with the bishop. And this brings us to the next principle, which is it's better to have 2 connected pass pawns than only 1 single pass pawn. It's actually much better. And so Capablanca is saying, look, I'm going to give you this pawn for free, because now I can take your pawn, and once I later push here and trade, I'm going to have 2 connected pass pawns to your 1. Remember, the 2 connected pawns is much better than a single pass pawn. So even though he's giving up a pass pawn to his opponent, he's happy to do it because he gets the connected pawns, which are extremely powerful. They're powerful because they can help each other. One can support the other, and you push forward, and then they can do it again. And you keep pushing them up the board, and it's very hard to stop them. Okay? So if you see an opportunity to make a trade like this, you should probably do it. All right, so white plays bishop a6, getting ready to kind of escort his pawn down. And what does Capablanca do? Goes back to attack the pawn. He positions his bishop in the center of the board, and then he starts to create the passed pawns, right? He needs two connected pawns. The only way to do that is to force a trade here, which is what he does. Okay, so now we have the situation. We've got these very powerful pawns for Capablanca. He does have to be a little careful here, but it's not that simple for white to push and get a queen, because if you ever push here, the bishop can always come back and just sit there, and it's not that simple for white to figure out how to get rid of that bishop. Okay, so that's Capablanca's idea. Meanwhile, he's going to be pushing these guys together, and it's going to be hard for white to stop them. All right, so we get a check. He moves the king over. White brings the king in front of the pawns. Bishop comes back out of the way. King goes to f1. Centralizes the bishops. Throws in a check. f4. And by the way, actually, let me keep going a few more moves. Bishop e6, bishop f3. He pushes. So this brings me to principle number 5. When you're pushing your pawns, you want to keep them as close together as possible. So what you don't want to do when you have connected pawns is push one all the way up the board and leave the other one behind, right? They need to stay together because that's where the strength lies. The strength is that they can support each other. And so over the next couple of moves, you're going to notice how Capablanca does that. He already pushed this one up one. Now he pushes the other one, keeping them side by side. Then he does it again, keeping them as close as possible. And then he's not going to try to like go over here and just push this one by itself. He's going to focus on keeping them side by side, which is why he goes here so he can do this, right? So the whole time he's just keeping them side by side, one, right? That's what you want to do when you have two pawns and you're pushing them down the board. All right, so white plays bishop e3. Now I have a question for you. Which pawn did Capablanca push next? The g pawn or the f pawn? Pause and think carefully. All right, if you had a chance to look at that, that was actually a trick question. He didn't push either pawn. And this brings me to principle number 6, which is you need to watch out for your opponent's sacrifices to force the game into a drawn endgame. Okay? So what I mean by that is, let's just take, for example, f2. If you would have played f2, there is a sacrifice where white can take, you take, he takes back. Now, normally, in a normal game, if this happens early in the game, this would be good for you. You got a bishop and you only lost 2 pawns. That's a good trade, right? But at this moment in the endgame, that's an awful trade because now we can't win. There's no way we're ever going to be able to checkmate. Even if we somehow manage to take this pawn for free, the bishop's going to be so annoying, we're not going to be able to checkmate. All we have left is 2 bishops. We need more. So the pawns actually become more valuable at the end of the game, and you cannot allow your opponent to give up 1 bishop for 2 pawns. That's just instantly a draw. There's nothing you can do about it, right? So you have to avoid that. And if you're wondering about g2, here's an interesting line, b7. You can try to come in here and support this to get a queen, but bishop to g1 is an amazing sacrifice. By the way, this is very complicated, so don't worry if you didn't see this line. That's okay. I'm just going to show you because it's kind of cool. We can take it for free. And here's the interesting thing. If white gets the queen, we actually win because now we can go check. They have to move. We get our own queen, and we have so many more pieces. This pawn is valuable. It's going to be annoying because he's going to check us for a little while, but it actually is a win for black. However, instead of pushing that, look what white can do. Remember, sacrifice. They give up this for free because now we don't have a pawn to push. If we try to move our bishop away to get a queen here, then they take that, and again, we have the same situation where we've lost both pawns, right? Even though we got a bishop, we lost both pawns. So we could take here, but then they get the queen. And by the way, this position is actually a draw because we're threatening the queen, but white is obviously just going to keep checking us forever, and we can't really get away from that. And so it's actually a draw, which I thought was kind of fascinating. But the key takeaway is that you have to watch out for these types of sacrifices, okay? I don't expect you to have seen all of that other complicated one after G2, but this F2 one is very basic, right? And this is the kind of stuff that you do need to make sure you're seeing in your games, okay? So having said that, Capablanca is like, okay, I can't do that. I need to do some more preparation before I push those pawns forward. We have to avoid the possibility of white sacrificing, basically. All right, so let's keep going. So he brings his bishop back. Okay, so right here, Capablanca brought his king up. In the game, white played bishop c6, but there's a really interesting line here. bishop a7. If white would have immediately gone for this, trying to get a queen, there's an amazing win here for black. If you want to pause and try to find it, it's kind of, it's a few moves long, so it's a little bit advanced, but I'll give you a chance. All right, if you had a chance to look at that, so you can actually take this, allowing them to get the queen, because then you can take it, and when they take you back, you have f2 check. The king moves to try to block. You bring your king up. You're threatening checkmate here. So white sacrifices, hoping that you take, because this is a stalemate, right? But you don't take, you actually just go checkmate with the bishop. That's pretty cool, actually. So I just wanted to show you guys that line. That didn't happen in the game, but that was a cool one that he pointed out in the book. So back to the game. After king e5, white played bishop c6. Okay. He blocks. He stops the bishop from coming down there and trying to do that. And now he's trying to activate his king. He wants to bring his king up here to support these pawns. But white says, no, I don't think so, and throws in the check and stops the king from getting there. Okay? King goes here. What move do you play as black? This is a very important move. If you don't understand this move, you're going to be losing or missing out on opportunities to win games in the end. All right, if you had a chance to look at that, principle number 7, in bishop endings, it is very common that you have to control key diagonals. And the way you do that is by forcing your opponent's bishop off of that diagonal. So in this example, we would like to move our king up here to support the pawns, but we can't. The bishop is stopping us from getting there. So how do we deal with that? Bishop g4. You have to either trade that bishop off or force it to leave the diagonal. Usually the only way to do that is by bringing your own bishop onto that diagonal and forcing it away. And by the way, this is why opposite color bishop endings, where you don't have the same color bishop, like if you know, this was off the board and this was off the board, we only had this one, we wouldn't be able to force this guy, right? That's where the opposite color bishops becomes really challenging. But in this case, we do have the same color bishop, so we can go there. So you have to force them off. Very, very important. This is very common in bishop endings, okay? So you force them away, and white decides to go ahead and trade. Otherwise, you were going to invade with your king anyway. So you recapture. Okay, so white plays king f1. He's running out of options. Now we've positioned our king perfectly. And now, remember earlier we didn't want to push the pawns because the bishop would have sacrificed for 2 of them. Now that's not an option. Now is the time when we start thinking about how do we push forward to win the game. And so white decided to play bishop g1 here to try to prevent this. I want to ask you the question though, what if they would have just moved their king back? How would you win here? This is actually very interesting how to finish off the game. All right, if you had a chance to look at that, this is pretty advanced, so don't feel bad if you didn't see this or you're kind of confused here. I'm just going to walk you through it. G2, and this is kind of a bonus principle maybe. Usually when you're pushing your pawns, if you have only one color bishop, you might want to push your pawns on the opposite color of that bishop. Why? Because now the weaknesses in the position that we create when we push our pawn forward can easily be filled in by our bishop. If you do it the other way, and by the way, of course, remember, we don't want to allow them to sacrifice and get rid of our pawns, although that's a losing move because of g2, which is kind of wild. But anyway, I'm getting beside the point. The point I was trying to make is, after, for example, king f1, how are you going to control these squares now? You can't, because your bishop's on the wrong color, right? So generally speaking, when you're pushing the pawns forward, you push on the opposite color of the bishop, then you can always bring your bishop into support wherever you need, usually to kick the king away, and that's how you win. Okay, so very kind of important detail there. So g2, king f2, you don't want to just give up this pawn for free because then the bishop is stopping the other guy, so you come back to defend it. White goes back, you bring the king up, and there's a couple of really interesting lines here. This is one that I want to show you. If the bishop goes to f2 check, you just slide over and you're threatening to come here checkmate. So they have to leave, but then you can go there anyway and get a queen, and after they move, you win. You take this and you take everything and you win. Okay. The other thing they could have tried, instead of checking you, is just simply moving their bishop here. And now what you can do, this is an amazing move. When I saw this, I was like, whoa. f2 check, you just give up the pawn for free and then move your king over here. Because again, you're going to do the same thing that we just looked at. You're going to bring your bishop, you're going to get a queen, and they can't stop you now. Again, they have to move their bishop somewhere. You just come in, you get the queen, and you win. Okay? And then the last thing that white could have tried, and I'm just kind of showing you all the different options, is bishop here check. They get the queen, and they're hoping that you take the queen. So if you take the queen, it's a stalemate. See that? But of course, you don't take the queen. You simply push your pawn, and you get the double pawn checkmate, which is really funny if you think about it. There's a queen right here ready to take you, but it doesn't matter because the game is over. Kind of fun. Okay? So all of that, just to refresh your memory, was after we played king h3 if they moved their king to g1. In the actual game, they played bishop to g1. Kappa played bishop c7, kind of just like a waiting move, forcing white to do something. They came down here. He brought his king up, getting ready to support the pawn. White got the queen. What's the winning move for black? If you had a chance to look at that, g2 check. King has to move. And now he simply takes the queen, and white has a problem because, yeah, you can take this with check, but after king h1, even though you can go here to temporarily kind of stop this, it doesn't matter. Do you guys see why? That's correct. After you force the trade, your king is actually in the perfect position to escort the pawn, and white has to run away, and then you just get a queen and you win. Okay? So really instructive endgame. There's a lot of key principles there that you guys should remember. And if you do that, I think you're going to win a lot more of your endgames. He only had one extra pawn, right? Let me remind you. He only had one extra pawn. With a little, kind of trick here, he turned that one pawn into two connected pass pawns. He did have to deal with this guy, but that was ultimately the decision that won him the game. So I hope that's helpful to you guys. Make sure, check out the link in the description. If you're not familiar with my Breaking 1500 course, that's helped a lot of people. And if you want to increase your rating going into 2026, that's a great place to start. It's for anybody under 1500. If you're rated 500, it's going to be helpful. If you're rated 1000, it's going to be helpful. Even if you're rated like 12 or 1300, it's going to be helpful. So anybody under 1500, Breaking 1500 is where you want to start. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. As always, stay sharp, play smart, and take care.